sessions. Whiteboarding sessions are basically ways of in talking about a problem, sympathizing with the user and sort of envisioning what a solution would be. And the times that I have whiteboarding sessions, it's mostly for very small things. Like you're not going to have a whiteboard session for an entire application. It just doesn't make sense. But you can have a whiteboarding session for a table of customers that you have to manage. Like that makes sense. So whiteboarding usually recommended for small features, um, which can, they can have many iterations, but I best recommend whiteboarding for small features. And what you want to do is you want to start by asking the client what they envision it would look like, and then whiteboard it out so they can look at it. And the second step would be you have to poke as many holes in what they did as possible. Obviously, not in a your ideas are terrible way, because we have to really stay away from language that is disparaging to the actual users or the client. We can all, some ways of phrasing challenging can be like, um have you thought of a different way of doing it? Or maybe have them say, if you could change something and build it differently, can you build it differently next? Like change something crucial about it and do that change right now. Or what would that change be? Or if you can add one more feature, or if you're actually picking up on stuff that they're leaving out, rather than flat out giving them the idea, which is what some of us tend to do, we will flat out just give them the answer. It's a much better approach, and what I find works better is that we challenge them and we ask them the right questions so that they get to the answer, right? So let's do a sample right now. Let's say you are H.H. Holmes and you're designing your murder house. And you want an elevator in that house, right? It's like the 1800s, you want an elevator in that house. And the elevator company says, we have the latest model. We have a model that allows for one button. And it only has this one button, and you can make that button whatever you want. So the first thing you want to envision is the visual aspect of what that would be. So let's go ahead and think about the visual. And I want you to really think hard about what that one button would be. But before that, what is the function of an elevator? What is the function of an elevator? So I want you to think that through and then give me that one button on that elevator panel.
Right. You want me to write this down?
Right. So technical constraints would be, well, no, I want you to design it right here.
Oh.
So one button. So one button. That's all it is. Yeah, that's all it allows for. One button. What is that one button? And then we can, yeah, just think about it. You don't have to say what the solution is. I just want you to like lay it out. I want to see if, and you can write text in there if you don't have, you don't need to put icons. It could be simple.
Oh.
Okay.
Not that versed inside of Figma yet, so please bear with me.
Awesome.
So
What?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it says here, one button, it's next floor, right?
Right.
So I'm someone visiting the mansion and I get in the elevator and I click the button once. What would happen if I click the button once?
You move to the next floor up.
Okay, awesome. So I move to the next floor. And how would I go to it's the next floor up. I'm trying to go through the third floor.
So you would hit the floor at the landing of each transition.
Right. So I love that. So let's write that down. So every time you hit the button, it takes you to the next floor. That is UX. You are giving this button functionality. You are basically confronted with a technical constraint or you're given a specific requirement, right? Technical constraint equals requirement. In this case, it's a mechanical constraint because we're talking about a real life, thing that you interact with as opposed to a UI. But that would be the requirement. The requirement means the panel has one button. That's what you have to work with. And then the user is telling you, I want to I want to go to the third floor. So that's what you developed. You hit the button, and every time you hit the button, it takes you to the next floor.
Right.
Now, what's called a pain point for the customer is basically something that they complain about once they're using or testing the item. So what can be some possible user pain points that you may encounter when they're using this MVP version or this beta version of the elevator?
I feel like I skipped a question of it being how many floors are there?
Okay, 8 floors.
8 floors. So you're on the 5th floor. You want to
Yeah.
go to the 3rd floor. You have to go up. Let's see, 7, 6,
Right.
7, 8, 1, 2,
So this
3.
is pain point number 1.
Right. So
Unnecessary. That would so the way you hit the nail on the head.
right.
Unnecessary. So let's say friction getting to the elevator you want, to the floor you want,
Yeah.
floor you need. Number 2, it's waste time.
Waste time.
So people who are in a hurry are going to have to sit there and click over and over and over again.
Right.
So now we're
Also,
yeah. Mhm.
the capacity of the elevator. If one person is trying to go 2 floors down and they have to hit it 7 times, that is holding the elevator up for everyone else trying to use it. So,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. 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 So our main um our main let's see. Third is so our main pain points are that there's friction getting to the floor you need. You're wasting a lot of time and you're basically holding everyone else up. You're affecting everyone's experience, trying to get to the floor that they need.
right.
So one thing I do want to ask you, how do is so the door is mechanical. So I close the door, right? And
Uh,
then I get in the elevator and I have to click 1, 2, 3, or do I click 1 and then have to wait and then 1 have to wait?
so for this specific function, because I've thought of another function now,
Yep.
but this specific function, I think there would need to be some sort of protection in that if you click the button once and then you're on the move, but you make some sort of, you bump into the button, and now you miss the first floor or the second floor, and now you're on the third. I think there needs to be some sort of protection to where you press the button once, and on the way to the next floor, it is voiding all additional requests until it's ready to make another.
Right.
It's yeah, until you're ready to make another request.
Yeah. So you can see how the technical constraints affects the experience of the user. You can
Mhm.
see how the having one button it's a problem because we're
Right.
like I don't understand, okay, fine, we have one button, so this is really going to be bad for the user. Time wasting, holding people up, and then accidental clicking, going to the floor you don't want. It's a nightmare, right?
Mm.
So here's the thing. So have you thought ever about other things that the button is able to do? Have you thought about the capabilities of the button itself? That would be my question to
Physically?
you, the user. Physically,
Yeah.
have you thought about the qualities of the button? And to me, it's, you did make a point for the floors, and, I mentioned the door, and we're talking about things that are in our environment that don't necessarily affect the experience as deeply, because whether it's 8 floors or 6 floors, you're still having to do all of these things.
Mhm.
The number of floors is not going to affect any of this.
Mm.
So what we want to do is we want to think about, we never actually gave mind to the physical
Right.
qualities of the button. So what are some of the physical qualities that the button may have?
Feels good to press.
You
No,
can
I
press
mean,
it, maybe you can rotate it.
oh, okay.
Uh,
Okay. So another thought I had though was, so I'm not real sure of the rules here, but what if
what if?
it
Yeah.
was a like a toggle,
So
and it
maybe,
had
yeah,
it had
like a,
three statuses to it. There was a neutral, and
uh-huh.
then you could press the top section in, and that would be input 2, and that would
Hmm.
pretty much just take you up until you wanted it to stop, and then you would move it to the neutral position to stop the elevator. And then the
Okay,
same thing for down, which would be input 3, which would be to go down.
awesome. Okay, yeah. So you're making two buttons out of one.
Well, 3.
So you're making three buttons out of one. So
Yeah,
that's
because
not going
there's
to work.
a,
Think about something else.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I like where you're going with
The
the
rotate.
dial,
Okay, yeah, the
like a
dial.
old
Maybe the button
rotary phone.
rotates, like a rotary, maybe. So
Yeah,
how do I
so
get to floor 3 if the button were to rotate?
we would have
Oh,
some sort
oh
of,
yes.
this is not a function, but a sort of
So this is what's called an
indicator.
interaction. Yeah, this is what's called an interaction, and it goes with design. So this is another interaction. So every time you hit the button, it takes you to the next floor that you've been that you've you know it takes you to the floor. It takes you to the floor you want, let's say the floor you want. And then with with the actual qualities of the button itself, you are taking into account the rotation. Maybe you rotate the button. So rotating to the floor you select. Yeah. So you're selecting the floor first, and then you click the button to go to where you're going.
Okay.
So that works, right? So I want you now to do the next step and think about some problems with this experience.
So I'm wondering if,
Oh, real quick, what
yeah,
did we solve here? So maybe now we get to the floor we want.
yeah. So number one is solved.
Oh,
Number
okay.
two,
Maybe number two.
number two, depends.
Yeah. So we can
Depends.
safely say that we're reducing friction
Right.
and we've solved wasting time.
Yeah.
Okay. So how about now? We have the 1, 2, 3. How about accidental clicking may worsen the experience? If that were applied with the button being clicked, what do you think it may apply with?
So I have this idea for this functionality that kind of goes from what you were saying, where you spin the dial to the floor you want, and then you press it in. I would say I move the dial to floor 3 and I press it in. That button stays in the locked, pressed in state until it arrives at floor 3 when the button pops out, letting you know it's almost, user feedback to where you have the elevator has completed your request, right? Of making it to floor 3.
Right.
So,
So if the button rotates,
mhm.
can it also be pressed?
um, I mean, what are the rules? What are the
So what if the button rotated and was able to be pushed in? So
Right.
you can rotate it and then push it in.
So yeah, step one of the instructions of use
Mm-hmm.
would be rotate to select floor. Two would be push button to engage service,
Mm-hmm.
and then the elevator's feedback would be the
When
button
you open the door on the floor.
stays depressed until
Okay, nice.
well,
You're doing some designing now. I like it. So yeah, the button stays pressed maybe until you open the door, because once you get to the floor, we can do it two ways. We can have it automatically, but I mean, we're talking about the 1800s. It
right.
has to be mechanical. So maybe when you open the door, there's a lever that pops the button out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah? Cool. So we go to the elevator. We rotate the button to select the floor. We push it in, and then it takes us to the floor we want. And then once you trigger that door open,
Right.
it goes boop and pops
Yep.
out. Okay,
Exactly.
so we took care of the accidental clicking,
Because
right?
that now that user interface is pretty much locked until your original request is fulfilled.
Right. So how about affects everyone XP?
Well, I mean, people are getting to the correct floor in one input.
Right.
So
Yeah. And it can
the
prioritize. So maybe if you can do rotation back and forth,
mhm,
where it's like, take me to 3, take me to 2, take me to 4, take me to, so it's kind of like a safe.
yep.
If you look at like a safe where you can rotate it back and forth, click, click, click,
Okay. Well,
and then you push it in or you pull it out, however you want, maybe.
so I'm seeing some
Go ahead, make the changes.
possibilities
What do you see?
for
Yeah, show me.
With that, I think one of the challenges is there's a possibility for the user to make errors in the way of selecting floors they didn't know they selected.
Okay, so tell me about that. Can you go further?
Yeah, so without some sort of display, like if these could light up, right? If we were on floor 1 and when you selected 3 and press it in and then
We
3
didn't. So we didn't have LEDs
yeah,
in the
yeah.
1800s. Just getting that out
So
there.
there's a mechanic that lights a lighter and there's a little tea light candle behind.
Well, I
Um,
saw that you did this here.
yeah, so this is
The
your dial. So
right.
it's
So
when you spin, it's going to point, right?
I like that. Right.
So that is the user's interface for knowing which number they're pointing at or which floor. The issue with selecting multiple floors at once is that once you engage the service for one floor, the interface becomes locked until that first request is fulfilled.
Right.
It's not going to
So
pop back out.
How do we so how do we solve for multiple floors? It's a very mechanical process.
Mm.
So maybe so I'm going to give you a little hint. I usually don't do this. So what if the button can be pushed in and pulled out? Kind of waiting for you to get there.
Yeah, I mean,
Pushed in to input and pulled out.
right. So some sort of, I think what you're leading me to is pushing in for each floor. So you rotate to your floor. We go to 3, we go to 4, we go to 6, and we press on those selections.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are ready
Maybe a
for
spring.
the elevator to complete its service, we pull it out to start the command line, basically.
Awesome. Yes, I love it. That's awesome. That was amazing. Yeah.
So we can,
So would you say that actually solves a problem for affecting everyone going up and everyone
yes,
going down? So whatever floor you're going to, if we're talking a very mechanical button in the 1800s.
right.
And the reason I say 1800s because mechanical, I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the call. But
You
yeah,
did.
so you're in this old, there are no LEDs, there are no computers. We are designing the UX for an elevator panel, and that's a real job. So there are people who, you know, this is what they do. Digital design for interfaces we use every day, for interfaces of something that'll give you directions, for interfaces of an ATM, of a dashboard in a car, of a VM when you're playing, virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome.
And
Um,
we got there.
yeah, that was super amazing. So I guess what I want to do now is yeah, so definitely you solved it. We have a button. Just to summarize, we started off with a button. We got the requirements for a button, and the requirements that we are giving our fake mechanic to design the elevator is the button should be able to rotate, be pushed in and pushed out. So when you push it in, there's a spring, it'll lock in a little key, maybe a panel, something that'll tell the rope that pulls the thing up, like lock on this floor. And the thing is, that's after you've closed the door, because closing the door will trigger that input in. Everyone's in the elevator already. Everyone selects the floor they want, click, 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 and then boom, we pull it out to trigger that sort of upward movement. It automatically stops on every floor as it goes up, and then it goes up, or maybe it'll go back down, however it would work. And then once you open that door, automatically that button will push back in and reset the elevator.
Right.
So awesome. Okay, so now that we got the elevator, let's introduce multiple buttons.
Oh, thank goodness.
Oh, trust me, this gets complicated.
Okay.
So the story is, fast forward a few 50 years.
Mhm.
Now we live in a condominium with lots of different people, right? So this is what we're calling our MVP, which is our initial idea. It may be simple. This is our beta version. It's simple. But now that client knows that you designed the original elevator, and he was like, hey, got the job done, but I think we need to improve it with the technologies that we have today. So there's a few more technologies that have come out, and now you're able to upgrade this experience. So as a UX person, you're like, yeah, you're going to go interview the tenants, and you're going to ask the tenants what they need. So I will say this, there's a few people who live in the building. The building is for people with low income and disabilities. So there's a lot of floors, a lot of people with children, older folks living in the house, in the condos. And there are still 8 floors. There are stairs that you can use up and down. And now we introduce the ability of having multiple buttons. So now I want you to upgrade, let me copy this up. And again, yeah, hold on. Let me get rid of this one.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're going to upgrade this to phase 1.
Okay.
So you're going to upgrade this to an experience that has multiple buttons.
Right.
Yeah. So
So how many buttons? As many or as little?
Yeah, as many
Okay.
buttons as you want, and it is it is as many buttons as you want. It's it is not digital, so it's as many buttons as you want. The buttons have any capability you want, but again,
It is mechanical.
remember, you have to work with the technical constraints that you have.
Right.
And I do want to say that sometimes you have to keep this in mind as someone who designed customer experiences or technical experiences. Sometimes your experience, you have to make it the best within the constraints you have. But sometimes when you get these new technical capabilities, the old way of doing it is what people are used to. So
Right.
sometimes adoption can be a little bit hard, and sometimes we need to roll features out. So tell me how you would make the elevator work, what features you would roll out,
Mm-hmm.
and how would people be able to get up and down. So yep.
Right.
So let's start with designing the panel.
Yeah. And it's only buttons still.
Yeah, it's still only buttons, but you get as many as you want.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 8
So
floors. Mm-hmm. Yep. Here, let me make it
8
larger
floors.
to accommodate for the 8 floors.
And I am not going to be just designing based on elevators I've been in, right?
Yeah,
In
you
real
can
life.
do whatever you want, but you can use elevators you've been in. That's fine.
Yeah, because
They work.
we've
If it
got
works, stick to it. Yeah.
elevators that have a button for each floor.
Yeah. Remember, it's buttons. It's not digital.
Right.
It's just press the button. You have as many buttons as you want.
So just going through and talking out loud through the button, the button configurations I've experienced, right?
Right.
We've
Right. Yeah.
got buttons for each floor. So these 8 are the assigned to each floor.
Right. Right.
And then usually there's a door open, door close.
Okay. So
So
each one of these buttons is a floor.
correct. Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, okay. So we have first floor. Hold on a second. Yeah. Fur to, etc. Yeah.
So
Just to get the idea across, we can make this a 2. Yep. Okay. And then,
and then similar to the rotary up above, there's
yeah.
some sort of onboard mechanical memory that is recording
Mhm.
inputs. So we selected 3, 5, and 6. Somehow the elevator's mechanics
Just
know
knows. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that 3 was pressed, then 5, and then 6. And it's going to store that memory until all of the commands are fulfilled.
Yeah.
So with this, we've got more buttons. So each floor can have its own button, and that's a personalized experience for the user. They don't have to go through and click and rotate, right?
Yeah.
They can select their own personal floor.
Okay. So I see here that there are 5 buttons. Did you meant to do that?
Well, so I was just talking through like my
Mm-hmm.
IRL experience. So there's usually some sort of like door closed, door open. This could possibly be some sort of
Okay. All right. So you're
cancel
saying, okay. Yeah.
or
Open and a close. Okay. And what does that do? And again, do you see how I'm posing questions? I know the answer, but I want to make sure that I'm having the user say it out loud. I want you to say it out loud because I want you to sort of think it. It's such a simple question that when I say, what does that do? It makes you stop and say, wait, it's not clear. And then you look at it and double check and sort of question yourself, like, wait, I thought it's obvious. It's open and close, obviously,
right.
because people second guess themselves. They're like, wait, am I doing this wrong? Wait,
Well,
So
and yeah, because I'm thinking, have I ever pressed those buttons in an elevator before?
right. Right.
So I mean, like the functions that I know of, the use cases I've used with open and close is you see someone with their hands full, they're just about to the elevator, but the door's closing on them. You press open to be a kind person, and that door opens back up so that person can come in the elevator and join you.
Wonderful.
Close is no one's nearby, you're in a hurry, you're late for a meeting, you press close 19 million times, hoping that the doors close and you can get there just a few seconds sooner.
So
I think that there might be an opportunity. So I've got an idea here, but I'm not sure if it fixes anything.
okay.
We could have some sort of like begin button. So we've got 3 different people in the elevator going to 3 different floors.
Everybody gets into the elevator. They click the button, the floors that they want, and then you hit close. And what happens?
So what I'm kind of thinking through is that there is
There is no time element. You need to be able to trigger this thing working.
right. So I'm thinking you select your floors when you are ready and everyone is on board and everyone's selected their floors, you hit begin.
Yeah.
That begins the service.
Yep.
If for some reason someone gets off at 5 that was meaning to get off at 6, the person getting off at 8 can maybe hit cancel so that they don't need to stop at 6, and they can input for 8 and just go straight to 8.
Yeah. So it's mechanical. So you're going to cancel everyone else's stop in that elevator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what happens if like somebody puts in 3, 2, 6, and then all of a sudden it's like, I forgot to hit 5.
Yeah.
I hit 7 by mistake. I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to push that sort of cancel button. You're most likely gonna have to specify what floor. So this is called over engineering.
Right.
So in enterprise, sometimes in our sort of journey to perfect the experience, we sometimes make it more complicated than it needs to be. So having them have to initiate or having an additional button to sort of cancel the trip, it's just, it's just like, how much of an inconvenient will it be to just, as you're moving, enter the floor that it needs to make a stop on and just ride it out?
Right.
So, once the door opens, you close the door again, it closes, you push your button and then it closes, you hit begin, and it just takes you to the floor you missed. So I would recommend as a UX person that you just remove this button because you just don't need
Right.
it. You're going to confuse the user and say, what's this button for? So one thing is, I can see that we rolled out the turning of the button. We rolled it out because it's an old function. We don't need that anymore. This is called legacy. It's legacy technology. So
Okay.
legacy tech. So the legacy tech means stuff that you're ready to roll out because just there's new ways of doing things. And the legacy technology would be the rotating of the button.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the dial thing, pulling in and out to trigger. Like we no longer need that. We have a button that will trigger for us. So until we push it, we can go ham on the buttons and it's just gonna make a stop on every floor you push. So we've rolled out this technology and now we have this amazing phase 1 layout. We've tried to stay away from the over engineering or over designing of this thing, adding, maybe a close button that may confuse the users. And can we safely say that we are not getting any friction getting the floor to floor, that the customer is able to get there fast? We're not wasting time. We're not affecting everyone going up and down. And we're not accidentally, having you click on the floor. You can just rectify it by just pushing the button you are going to. So that's great.
I will
I
suggest
added
one thing.
Yes.
Can the elevator have some sort of phone feature for emergency? Because we do have those
To stop the elevator altogether?
Well,
Okay, yeah, that works. That has a
something
good
to
function,
service
yeah.
our disability tenants to where
Oh, okay.
they have fallen, and
So what would that emergency button be? How would that work?
one option could be a on elevator telephone that maybe, or not telephone, but some sort of,
Digital, we don't have that technology. What's a
okay.
telephone? What's a
So, okay,
telephone?
so
I think you're onto something, but
my
go ahead.
other idea would be emergency returns the elevator to floor 1,
I
where
love it.
maybe there's a
Yes.
doorman that
In
the
a
emergency rings a bell, the doorman can hear that and can be at the ready for when that emergency elevator returns back to the lobby.
yeah,
And
maybe it
that,
rings a bell like out in the lobby and like whoever the doorman can just run over and help whoever is on.
Correct.
So returns elevator to first floor. So and the primary it would ring bell to doorman or assistants. I love that. So I'm going to pose a few questions.
Mhm.
The requirements, well, not the requirements, our target audience. This is called target audience. Our target audience is a building with low income disability. So one thing I would say is, have you thought about the people you're servicing? Have you created sort of demographics? Let's create some personas real quick. So this is a persona, and I'm going to give you a persona. So we have Stacy, who is blind.
Mhm.
We have Joe, who is unemployed. And we have um Luis, who is a small person. Would you say that this is the ideal elevator panel? Would you hand over this design as is with these requirements to the developers of that elevator panel? Or is there something else you may want to add based on the people you are helping?
Well, for Stacy, we do need extruded braille inputs along with
Okay, so
the
make
numbers.
the buttons Braille would be one of, okay, that's great. So we help Stacy with that,
Yeah,
adding Braille, so she's able to feel the buttons.
right.
How about Joe?
Joe, I'm trying to understand what issue he might have. I don't know if he has a specific issue with this elevator. Um,
Yeah, so Joe
is that a trick?
is a ruse.
Yeah, is it?
We need to
But
learn how to identify personas that are relevant to our product that we're creating, the ones who matter. So always when we're given a specific audience or users, we first have to identify the ones who will be directly affected by the product we're designing.
right.
So before we actually start designing, we say, okay, who is going to be affected? Who are our key personas from our target audience who are going to use this the most? So who would that be?
Well, Stacy is going to be unable
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
to the correct inputs
exactly.
without some sort of
Yeah.
assistance.
And how
Now,
about Luis?
Luis um, may have trouble reaching buttons.
Uh,
Um,
Okay. So what would we
so
do? What additional requirements would we sort of make sure that we mention in a user experience assessment for our elevator panel developers that we may want to mention to make sure that they don't leave out? So we already said, hey, you guys remember we want to make the buttons braille. So
mhm.
have the little dots on the design to sort of help with that braille aspect. But what other thing would we do?
the placement of the panel in the actual button or in the actual
What
elevator.
about, yeah, what about the placement? Yeah.
So it would have to be a maximum vertical reach of maybe 3
Mhm.
feet off the floor, because not only does this affect Luis, who is a current tenant, but any future tenants that may be small or maybe limited to a wheelchair experience.
Right. So that is called a requirement. So sometimes there are requirements of users that the target audience is specifically needs, our personas a need that may not be immediately evident in a design. Sometimes that happens where we're like, wait, we need to make sure that the target audience, um, the target audience is getting what they need. And right now we have two people who have requirements. One that we can actually reflect in the design and say, hey, we need to add Braille. And there's another one whose requirement you can't reflect in the design when you're handing it over. So you always want to attach interactions or requirements with that panel. So we know that the technical constraint is multiple buttons. It's very mechanical. We design the elevator panel to sort of match and meet the needs of the user, all these needs. And this time we actually know who we are building this for. We took that into account, our target audience, and we built our personas. We have an elevator rider, but then we have a disabled elevator rider. And we want to make sure that we are covering for both the capable and the handy capable. So some people will be short and not able to reach the elevator panel. Some people will be blind and not able to read the elevator panel, etc. So you've added interactions or requirements to go with that design that you have. And you say, hey, make sure that when you're building this, you're doing X, Y, Z.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
when you release it or when you deploy it, you're deploying it to an iOS phone, or you're deploying it to only Android, or you're deploying it to this system because that's what they're using. So that is a technical requirement. Okay. So do you have a hard stop right now? You want to stop right there and then we can continue this experience? We're going to go probably another session with this.
Yeah, let's do another session.
Awesome. All right, so let me stop recording right here. And before I stop recording, is there anything you want to say about this sort of process with the elevator? How is this getting your sort of, is this getting your little UX senses
Oh,
tingling or?
definitely. No, I definitely understand how the process can be really helpful. I'm You're kind of leaving on a cliffhanger with the requirements because the more I think about it, the more questions I have on like, okay, but
Open to interpretation. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what
Sometimes you
if,
don't have all the facts.
yeah, but also what happens if we have an idea that is outside of this panel? It's a good
Well,
idea, and we're not going to talk about it right now, but later on in a separate session with whoever the tenants are, we talk about something else.
right, right. That's awesome. Yeah.
Because Joe is a user that is not affected by this board, but
Mhm.
maybe he fits in with a different group of users that maybe the landlord is trying to build some sort of community. So maybe the elevator has some sort
Right.
of community board that could have confidentials for job hirings or
That's
community
a
events.
great idea. And we're gonna do that in the next session. That's a great
Okay.
idea, actually. Let's add that into the next session because we're gonna jump another 20 to 30 years ahead. Joe's still
Okay.
going to be living in the building,
Did he get
and
a
Stacy and
job
Luis
yet?
and maybe some other people. What?
Did he get a job yet? Or guy?
To be continued. I'm gonna leave that as a cliffhanger. Okay, awesome. So let's continue building this. We're probably gonna get to like phase 4 or 5 with this elevator. And yeah, good job. I mean, this is
Awesome.
amazing. I love the design, and you're really like, I love the fact that you were like blind braille. Luis, the small person, a lot of people never think. They always think, oh yeah, we need to add braille. But whenever I
Yeah.
do this experience with other people, it's really easy to be like, well, I don't know. I mean, what? And it's like, think about the environment. You're not just designing within an application, but you're also designing applications that live in the real world. And that's the difference between like CX and UX for VR. You need to consider the factors that weigh in and affect your user's experience that aren't necessarily in the design. So, okay, we'll leave it there, and I'll see you next week. And let me go ahead and stop recording.